Assalamu alaikum. We are back with Sheetal Cross, who is firing on all cylinders, clearing away the cobwebs, removing the darkness, and enlightening us about some of the trials and tribulations and the perils and even that which is good about the media. Biggest problem facing media right days is fake news. What is fake news and how do we handle it?
Well, I think that there's a lot of different ways in handling fake news, but just to inform the people who are listening that aren't sure of what it is. So you get mainstream media news, factually checked news, news that's been verified. A group of journalists or a single journalist has gone out and phoned the relevant people, who's got in touch with the people that were part of the story, the witnesses, spoken to police, spoken to the various elements, and gathered the correct information, put it together, and then correctly relayed the same information after receiving it from multiple people. And that becomes your news, right? So you open up the Mercury or the Sunday Tribune and all of these mainstream media platforms, and what you're expecting is factually reported news. Fake news, unfortunately, is news that is, as it says, fake. It's news that's not correctly collated. That sometimes it's just outright lies. That it's deliberately. It can be deliberately constructed to mislead people. An example of that, if I may speak to the excuse me, the American elections. I know that the FBI have confirmed that the Russians had interfered in the elections, and what the FBI allege is that the Russians interfered with the elections using fake news on social media, flooding social media sites with very politically loaded messages that they then tried to influence the opinion of people that believed that. And I think the only way we can combat fake news is for people to be more aware of the real news that exists. If you're doing the let me read the newspaper, or if you're not reading the traditional newspaper, going online, checking what's on in terms of News 24 or legitimate news sites, and informing yourself of what's going on. And then when you see fake news come up, you immediately recognize, hey, wait a second, I went onto a reputable website that has fact-checked and fact-based news, and this seems completely contradictory. And you will see the discrepancies. It's not rocket science to tell, if somebody was murdered, that they're dead and they're confirmed dead. And then on the next thing, you see videos of that person, hey, I'm alive, but no, the FBI have stated, or do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That's just a very simple example of how to recognize what fake news is, and, trying to...
How is it then that people like in the America or the United States elections, how come they buy into that, and get influenced?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not a psychologist.
Is it
I
because they
don't-
want to believe
yeah.
it? Because they want to move in that direction? Because it seems as fake news seem to have appealed to a certain group of people. Right wing. I'm not going to use the color because...
Yes, no, for sure. And I know they're also known as nationalists.
Yes.
Yeah. Just to put it mildly.
Yes.
Look, like I said, I'm not a qualified psychologist. I'm a qualified journalist, and I can only speak to the opinion based on what I see and what I perceive. And I read somewhere that it wasn't so much that the news that was being filtered through from the Russians, or the fake news being filtered through from the Russians, that was the problem. There was a qualified person who had given the opinion that people already shared those dark thoughts and dark opinions, but the influence of fake news highlighted and then actually propelled those beliefs.
Gave it life.
And gave it more life than it already had. So yes, I think sometimes a person either has concept of something, but then with information coming through from all fronts, you start to mold and believe what you're seeing or hearing or reading. And then sometimes you have no concept whatsoever of something, and then you get introduced, unfortunately, misled with fake news, or with somebody who has an agenda or propaganda, and who makes you believe, or alludes to certain things that then creates a belief system within you. So
And then also, it also gets you to act. Like
Yes.
the way people
Yes.
reacted to Donald Trump in
Absolutely.
the elections.
Well, one of my favorite things that I laugh about, and when I say favorite, I don't mean that in a hey, by the way, I take it lightly. I actually just want your listeners to understand. When I say favorite, I mean like, you know, when you're fed up of something, when you see a reoccurring theme, and you're like, ah, it's the greatest hits of somebody's BS. One of my favorite things, and I completely dislike President Trump for a lot of his BS rhetoric around people of color and you know, his Islamophobia and his homophobia and all of these horrible things that he says. But I've noticed through following American politics, and of course I've visited America a few times, but I don't live there. So just to speak from the experience of what I've learned through news media and information, I've learned that, you know, there are a lot of people, like I said earlier, that share those same beliefs. And what happens is if you're in the presence of people who have the same value system as you become a microphone to those values. What happens at rallies? Why do they chant to all the rubbish that he speaks? Because he's speaking to what people refer to as the forgotten America. You know, they say that there's a lot of people who in the previous governments have not had their voices heard, and maybe rightfully so. If you're going to be a nationalist and a racist, and then there's no place for that sort of thing in society. You can scream it to the clouds, but you can't act out on it. And I know that there were some Nazis that were, you know that they killed a woman, and
Yes.
then his response to that was, there's good and bad people on both sides. You know,
Yes.
what kind of response is that? You know, so you know, the thing is, if you leave a rock unturned, the worms and things remain underneath. But the second you lift it up and give it light, everything starts to spew out. You know. So I think you need to, if you really want to inoculate yourself against fake news, make yourself aware, become knowledgeable, you know, look for fact-checked and fact-based information. Do a bit of investigating on your own. You know, Google isn't always reliable in terms of, or the internet isn't always reliable when it depends on what sources you're using. If you're Google searching CNN and you're finding information on CNN, then you know, hey, reputable agency or reputable source. If you're going to somebody's blog and website with like 5 hits, how reputable is that? You know. So I think it's a big problem, and it's not just America; it's everywhere. You know.
Well, okay, just let's go. Tuesday is going to be election day in the United States.
Yeah.
A certain number of people are going to be standing for election, re-election. The GOP, the grand old party of Donald Trump, is going to try and increase its lead, and the Democrats, of course, are lagging. What do you think is going to happen?
Whew, it's difficult to say. You're just nailing me today with all of these brilliant questions.
I am not naming you. You are an informed person.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for that question. It's actually quite a lovely question. I think it's difficult to always make assumptions. You know, I don't live there. That's not my backyard, so to speak. That's not my political party. Again, speaking to the information I've received, you know, through the mainstream media news, and also my personal feeling about the American elections prior and this upcoming one, I really hope that the Democrats kind of take the House and that they get enough seats to make policy change, especially because of Special Counsel Robert Mueller is going to be presenting his report on the investigation he's done this past year, and whether or not there was collusion, whether or not there was interference, and that sort of thing. And I can't speak to what I think will happen, but I can speak to what I hope will happen, which is Democrats, you know, like young people, get out there and vote, please, so that Democrats can have the upper hand. And if it comes down to it, take the step of impeachment, because Republicans just really don't seem to care, irrespective of the billions of dollars of tax fraud or the alleged collusion and the, you know, alleged misdeeds, and they just don't care. And
Well, you know, Donald Trump has raised himself $200 million for this election.
yeah,
And it seems that money is being used to tell people tell people,
Yeah.
you know, we are this color and we have to stay in power, regardless. And this is what the whole thing is coming about. I personally fear that a lot of people of a particular racial group saying we should remain in power and this is our best bet. What do you think?
I hear where you're coming from, and I agree that there's, again, all of this rhetoric and fear mongering, and it's unnecessary, you know. Excuse me. But I also think that all of that rhetoric is being combated right now through actual news reporting that is substantial news reporting. And just to come back to that whole media theme, I'm very excited to be a journalist right now in the year 2018 going
yes,
on.
yes.
It's never been a better time to be a journalist. It's never been a better time to be in the profession of fact-based reporting. It's never been a greater time to be on the side of science, you know. And I think that every time Donald Trump lies, he gets caught out. Somebody from CNN or CNBC or any of these other news channels besides Fox News, because we know how much Fox News loves him and will just spin his BS. But any other mainstream media that is standing up for facts is counteracting that BS and playing contradictory clips where he says, I never said that, and in the very next second, hey, he said that. I didn't do that, and the next second, yes, he did do that, and yes, he is lying. And so I think that when you ask me what do I think about the fact that a certain minority want to remain in power and control the majority, it's disgusting. In the year 2018, that you have people who want to have that kind of rhetoric. It's disgusting that in 2018 you have, they don't understand that their policies have a global impact. The conversations that they have and the things that they do, it's affecting lives around the world. And I'm just happy that news agencies and mainstream media is giving voice to the truth at a time when we need it the most.
Yeah, but I just also want to point out to you that there are people in South Africa who have nothing to do with the people in America. Neither are they from the same race group.
Yes, that's
and
correct.
Yet they talk so similar things. Now, as a journalist, that must sadden you.
It saddens me as a human being.
Okay.
It saddens me as a human being. I think that, around the world, there will always be good and bad people. Around the world, globally, every country has got, people that are willing to fight for what's right and for the, liberation of other people and for the rights of humanity. And then you get idiots who just live in a bubble and they don't care to educate themselves or learn differently or do things differently. They want to be victims of circumstance. And unfortunately, if they grow up believing that dialogue and internalize that dialogue and that becomes their mantra and that becomes their life work, you're going to find it anywhere and everywhere. We just need to be mindful that we don't fall into that trap of being those kinds of people. We are at choice to say, hey, listen, I want to be different and I want to be positively impactful to people's lives. I don't want to be negatively impactful. And I just, it's very saddening as a human being, not just as a journalist. So.
Yeah, strangely enough, I see what's going on in America and I listen to Donald Trump and then I turn my attention to South Africa. There's a tax collector that talks just like him. There is former heads of state that say the same thing that he is saying.
Yeah.
And all of them seem to ask one question. What have I done wrong?
I met somebody recently, and I won't go into great detail, but speaking about having local people here that are, obviously sharing the same rhetoric, sharing the same negative messages that it's coming out of the States right now about people of color. I actually met a person of color who said, I believe 100% in Donald Trump. And I was like, but why? And she said, because the church backs him. The church said that it's fine, we'll just give him a pass for sleeping with an entertainment star, for going forward and doing all these things. Because if the church, and she's very Christian, she says, if the church is behind him, then I'm behind him. I was like, but look at everything else he's done. You can't just say because he's been given a free pass by a religious organization that what he's doing is morally correct or not. Nope, doesn't care. Just believes that he should continue down the same path.
Okay, I think we're going to change the subject
Yeah.
now. Enough of darkness. Now, you also into brand management.
Yes, thank you.
And obviously, this means looking at positive sides of people.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, I think you are talking or you are negotiating or you've signed up a leading singer-songwriter with the name of Julian Moon from the United Kingdom.
Yes.
Now, this is a rare, should I say, accolade for you
Thank you.
because our people of our color don't get breaks like this.
Oh,
How
well,
did you do it?
well, thank you. Thank you for that compliment. And it's true, working with people internationally. Firstly, Julian Moon is very well known in the States, and she has a very good online following. And she really wants to come to South Africa and to sort of be introduce her music into our scene. And how I actually met her was. Her boyfriend's father is a doctor of philosophy in the States, and he teaches at a university over there. And we met through an academic program recently, and we were just discussing music. And he says, my son's dating a musician, and because we were chatting about, getting into mainstream media, marketing oneself, having a very specific message, and then working strategically to put that message out there in a positive and influential way. And I said to him, it's so silly because I've just had an opportunity through him to listen to some of the music, and I was like, wow, this music is amazing, and I can't believe we've been missing out on this artist. And we started a conversation, and I said, you know what, I'd love to be able to chat to her and find out, if we could, how to get hold of her music and this sort of thing. And then I realized, wow, she's on iTunes, she's on Spotify, she's on all the major online platforms where you could download this music, but we just aren't aware. And then it speaks to, how are you marketing yourself? What are you doing? And these are some of the things that we're trying to teach other people as individual brands or as businesses. And so the brand management side has come into it where I'm able to now sort of just advise a lot of individuals on how to represent themselves a little bit more clearly. And when it comes down to, and obviously doing so without sort of stepping on my journalism side, I do work closely with Olivia Jones as well, and who does a lot of PR. So she helps with the PR side, obviously.
She was a surfer, right?
Yeah, well, that's one of her passions, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I've also now taken on Dr. Nirvana Singh, who's a
But
little...
before we go
yeah.
to know, what's going to happen to Julian Moon?
Well, I don't want to speak too much to all of the strategies that we're using to sort of introduce her into the South African sort of environment, but I am negotiating with some really big radio stations to kind of like get her music played so people can hear what she's doing and some of the stuff that she has. She's got 3 albums. She was actually previously signed with Warner Brothers in the United States.
That's big. They own Time magazine.
So she's got a lovely album out with them, and if you do get a chance, maybe just go on and either onto YouTube or onto Spotify or onto iTunes, and I encourage listeners. I know that the audience here would be more religious and sort of non-English, but for the younger guys.
But then again, not only that, but
yeah.
There are religious songs like that are now more and more popular in the English language, especially amongst Muslims, and they are looking for role models, style of singing.
Yeah.
And I think she would be an ideal role model because...
She does use some profanity in some of her songs, I apologize, but she, I agree because she speaks the truth and she speaks from her heart, and she writes songs that, earlier I had asked her, just to clarify, because I always fact check everything, how much of your lyrics are yours? And just like 100% of the lyrics, everything is based on life experience. Some of my favorite songs, she's got the song called 2 a.m. I listen to that in the car and it just completely soothes me. And then she's got this, it's just an effing cup of coffee, or it's called Cup of Coffee, and there's a radio version, she says just a freaking cup of coffee, where she talks about this woman ordering a cup of coffee, and she's the waitress, and the woman's antagonizing her because the coffee's not made right. We all have those days where hey, it's just a cup of coffee. Back off. You know, your dog didn't die. You didn't catch your husband in the act. So she's got some just real.
You think she'd be good here in South Africa?
I think she'd be amazing, and I'll tell you why. Look, I do, apart from my own religious music and Indian music and Hindi music and Bollywood songs, listen to Western music because we grew up
Yes.
listening to English as much as we did anything else. And the reason I believe she'll be phenomenal is I went to a Michael Bublé concert, and the one thing he said before he started his concert was, "Did you know that I broke out here as an artist in South Africa first before I went global?" And then he spoke to the experience he had in Johannesburg. He had spoken to a guy there who had just made a few phone calls, got a few songs on the radio, and the next thing, people were just flabbergasted, and they loved his music, and he started making records, and he got, you know...
That's Bublé.
Yes, Michael Bublé. I think on my YouTube channel, I put up a little video of him explaining that story, and it got up 1,000 or so hits, but it always stuck with me that, you know, the power of mainstream media, coupled with social media, coupled with other media, the general media, can be so phenomenal in taking your brand, your message, who you are, what you are, and taking it to the world. And it's even better when your message is positive. It's even better when it's ethical and you know, guided. So
So you groom the brand. You-
I wouldn't, but not in a PR sense, because remember,
No,
I am
not in a
I am,
PR
yeah,
sense, but,
it's just
but to, of course, reach a new level.
absolutely, because technology is changing. The technological landscape across the media environment is changing. And I think people aren't keeping up to those trends. And it's simple things that they could be doing. And again, it's to separate myself from the PR, although it does, I think, it's marketing strategies that are not biased. I'm a journalist. I can't ever be seen to be biased. And that's how I separate. I write my news stories, which have nothing to do with all of these other things. And then I have these other things, which are just fun projects, like being able to introduce an internationally known singer to the South African market. I don't see any
That
bias.
must be exciting.
It's very exciting. It's
Okay,
yeah.
we're going to move. All right, but obviously, being brand management,
Yeah.
you meet a wide variety of people.
Yeah,
You
but I'm-
also have Dr. Nirvana Singh
Yes, yes.
on your books.
Yes. Oh, what
Tell
a
us
wonderful.
about her.
Oh, thank you for asking about that. Look, she's an extremely accomplished, amazing, and phenomenal woman. She's an actual medical doctor.
Born and bred in Durban.
Born and bred in Durban, yeah.
Which medical school?
I think it was the University of KwaZulu-Natal, but
Okay.
I might stand corrected. The thing is, she's been a doctor for a very long time, but she's also an author, and she wrote a gorgeous little book about her life's journey. It's not very. It's not a novel, but it's perfect for young people, right to adults, to you know, sort of just learn positive messages about how you could change your life. And you know, the other thing is, she's just, apart from sitting on on multiple medical boards and having herself well placed.
Is she a specialist physician or something?
I think she's a GP. Yeah.
And she sits on multiple medical boards.
I stand corrected there.
She sounds a very special lady.
She's a wonderful and phenomenal person. Apart from, you know, I think the things that stands out about her is she's got like 1.3 million followers on Facebook. And
More than Trevor Noah?
there was at one point a poll that showed she was leading, and she had social media following that surpassed him. Yeah. And I know
Whoa.
that she had a Twitter feed. She had just started it one weekend. She started a Twitter account. And within like 3 or 4 days, she had like 66,000 followers.
What does she tell the people?
Yeah, you know what I think it is. She's very well known internationally. She's actually an international personality, especially in India, where she's very well known. She holds a title of ambassador between the countries, especially because of her volunteer medical expertise in the projects she's worked on there.
Okay, we're going
And
to just take a
quick break.
a quick break, but we're going to stay with Dr. Singh when we get back.
Okay, wonderful.
Assalamu
Yeah.
alaikum.